Hello, and welcome to Deadly Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Tony. In this podcast, I am going to be talking about the paranormal, ghosts, legends, folklore, and supernatural creatures. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, and thank you for listening. Hi, and welcome to tonight's episode. In this episode, I would like to speak about some cold case files that happened right here in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This story is going to be about 5 missing people who have never been found. The first one is Dennis Martin. Dennis Martin was born July 20th, 1962. He was an American child who disappeared on June 14th, 1969 in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee at the age of 6. The search effort was the most extensive in the park's history, involving approximately 1,400 searchers in a 56 square mile area. The disappearance. Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old resident of Knoxville, was visiting the Great Smoky Mountains National Park along with his father, grandfather, and an older brother on Father's Day weekend in 1969. The camping trip was a family tradition for the Martins. The family hiked from Caves Cove to Russell Field and camped overnight. The next day, they camped to Spence Field near the Appalachian Trail, where they planned to spend the night. Dennis disappeared on June 14th at 4:30 while planning on surprising the adults with his brother and other children from a separate family the Martins were camping with. He was last seen by his father going behind a bush to hide, intending on surprising the adults with the other children. Not after seeing him for about 5 minutes, and when all the other children had returned to the campsite, his father became concerned and began searching for him. His father ran down the trail for nearly 2 miles until he was sure he could not have gotten away any further. After several hours, they sought help from the National Park Service rangers. The area where Martin disappeared is marked by steep slopes and ravines. Wild animals such as copperhead snakes, bears, feral hogs, and bobcats inhabit the area. A downpour broke out shortly after Martin's disappearance, dropping 3 inches of rain in a matter of hours, which washed out trails and caused streams to flood. Temperatures on the night of June 14th dropped to nearly 50 degrees. Search efforts, including a separate search by the National Guard and Green Beret, found no trace. Heavy rains during the first day's search and heavy mists the next days hampered efforts. Up to 1,400 people were involved in the search effort, potentially obscuring possible clues. Footprints in the area, but were dismissed from the possibility of being Martins by park officials, who determined them to have been left instead by a Boy Scout participating in the search. The child-sized footprints led to a stream where they disappeared. The tracks indicated that one foot was barefoot, while the other was in an Oxford, the type of shoe Martin was wearing, or a tennis shoe. Retired park ranger and author Dwight McCarter believes that the prints likely belonged to Martin, as the tracks were not a part of the group and none of the Boy Scouts were searching while barefoot. By June 22nd, 56 square miles of ground had been covered. More than 1,000 searchers continued to look until June 26, when the search was cut back. The search was abandoned on June 29th, after a last search. The search was officially closed down on September 14th, 1969. As of 2024, it is still the largest search in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis's father offered a $5,000 reward for information. A few years, a ginseng hunter claimed to have discovered scattered skeletal remains of a small child in Big Hollow, Tremont. He kept the find to himself until 1985 because of fear that he would be prosecuted for illegal ginseng. A subsequent search turned up nothing. The unsuccessful search for Martin led the National Park Service to review and amend its policies on searches for missing people. 3 main theories exist about what happened to Martin. First is that he became lost and perished from exposure or other cause, likely not far after the first night. This is the most probable theory according to park officials. The second is that he was attacked by a hungry bear, or less likely, a feral pig, and carried off. The third is that he was abducted and taken out of the park by something or someone. His father was a prominent of the third theory. On the afternoon that Martin disappeared, tourist Harold Key and his family heard an enormous sickening scream, and shortly thereafter, witnesses of an unkempt, rough-looking man running up the trail where the scream had came from. Key looked on as the man got into a white car and abruptly sped off in it. Park rangers and the Federal Bureau of Investigation concluded that there was insignificant evidence to link the sighting to Martin's disappearance, particularly given that the Key sighting was approximately 5 miles away from where Martin disappeared, the exact time of the sighting being unknown, and the lack of trails connecting to the two sites. Now, these stories really get to me. What happened to Dennis Martin? Was he abducted? Or did he actually just go missing? Why were there no signs found of this young boy? Let me know what you think about what happened to Dennis in the comments below. Our second story is of Trini Gibson. Friday morning, October 8th, 1976, was shaping up to be a rainy, chilly day. There was a field trip planned, but not because of the weather forecast. 16-year-old Trini Gibson of Knoxville, Tennessee, thought it would be canceled. Trini was a part of a horticultural class at a local high school. She was very interested in plants, trees, and other living things, hoping to later attend the University of Tennessee and study landscape architecture. Trini worked hard at a cafeteria in the local mall, carefully saving her earnings so that she could invest in her future. When Trini arrived at the local high school that morning, driven by her mother Hope, she asked a fellow student passing by if the field trip was still on or not. Told that yes, it was a go, Trini took her bag lunch, but left her purse and her books behind in the car. Then she waited on the sidewalk with her fellow students while her mother drove off. Students boarded a bus, and once seated, were informed by their teacher that they were all headed to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The students clapped and cheered. Trini shared a seat in the back of a bus with a friend, Robert Simpson. He was a senior and a close friend of Trini's brother Bob, who graduated the previous May and was in the Navy. Bob had just come home on leave, and he had asked Robert to keep an eye on Trinity that day. She hadn't been away from home and family for an entire day, and Bob was a bit concerned for her well-being. The bus arrived at the park around noon and parked in the Klingman Dome lot. The teacher told them that their assignment was to hike to Andrews Bald and back to the bus. The students were to observe the plants, trees, and flowers along the way, but they were not to pick or gather anything. They were not to go further than Andrews Bald or to take any side trails. The meeting time back at the bus was set for 3:30 p.m. Once the students raised their hands to show understanding of the instructions, they were dismissed. The bus driver stayed with the bus while the students headed towards Andrews Bald. Setting their own pace, breaking up into small groups, having a good time, they socialized and ate their lunches. Robert had loaned Trini his brown and orange plaid wool jacket, as she was only dressed in jeans and a blouse and a sweater. He and Trini hiked together on the way to the Bald. The teacher was the only adult on the trip that day. Alone with 40 teenage students, he hiked with the groups of students throughout the day. But he was the one man among 40 students. Many are unaware that Trini had wanted her mother to come along as a chaperone. Unfortunately, the trip was an all-day event, and Hope did not have a babysitter available for her younger son, who had just turned 6, so she had to back out of the trip. Trini and Robert reached Andrews Bald and sat down and had lunch. Trini sharing her sandwich with him. By all accounts, she was in a good spirits, and they had cracked a few jokes. It had began to rain, so they took cover underneath a tree. From then, accounts began to get muddled. Although Robert was tasked with watching over Trini, he stated that she wanted to start the hike back to the bus, and he wanted to stay behind at the Bald and hang out a little while longer. Trini set off on her own, still wearing Robert's jacket. Trini walked along Forney Creek Trail at a quick pace. She would catch up with a group of students, fall in step with them for a few paces, then overtake them. The last group that saw her had sat down to rest and invited Trini to sit with them. She declined and kept going. They were the last group of students to witness Trini. They saw Trini further down the trail, stop and crouch down. It appeared she was looking at something to the right of the trail. Then she stepped off to the right. One of the girls in the group looked at the place where Trini had gone off trail once they had resumed their hike after a short rest. There was no place to go. Only thick shrubbery, rock terrain, ferns, and a small creek. No side trail. She called Trini's name. No answer. A fellow student came up on the trail, and the girl asked him if he had seen Trini Gibson, but he hadn't. Assuming that she would be back at the bus, they carried on. At 3:30, the group of the high school students were back at their starting point, the Klingman's Dome parking lot. Someone mentioned, "Where's Trini Gibson?" Another student asked Robert Simpson who was among the returned students, Robert replied that he had hiked to the bald with Trini, but she had left to return to the bus. So he decided to spend some of the time tracking a bear. Nobody had recalled seeing Robert along the trail, and nobody else had hiked with him on the way back down to the bus. What was to follow was a massive search of the park by both ground and air. Heavy rains, wind, and a fog that night made conditions difficult for searching. Hoar frosts made the ground slippery, and the abundant fall foliage made spotting difficult. One searcher slipped and fell, breaking several ribs. Helicopters, ground searchers, and teams of bloodhounds and German shepherds were brought in. The search lasted until November 1st, 1976, and another search was begun in April of 1977, lasting until May of 1977. No tangible trace of Trini was found in the park. Cigarette butts were found along the trail with a particular can of beer next to the spot where Trini stepped off trail. The search dogs tracked Trini's scent to the base of Klingman's Dome observation tower and to the shoulder of a paved road 1.6 miles from the dome at Collins Gap. There is also a parking lot in this area. More cigarette butts of the same brand were found at the shoulder of this road. Several sets of dogs all had the same conclusive results, as well as dogs brought in by Trini's uncles. Though the search of the park proved futile for locating Trini herself, oddly, her belongings started to surface. Trini had a large, thick Stanley comb that she always carried in her front hip pocket, made especially for her long hair. Her sister had an identical one, both bought by their mother, Hope, as a special treat. Trini was never without her comb. After she disappeared, the comb surfaced on the dash of Robert Simpson's car. He had been using it to comb his own hair. Bob Gibson had seen it, and when questioned, Robert said that Trini had given him the comb to keep for her. Next, the jewelry showed up. Trini had both a star sapphire pendant and a ring on when she vanished that day. The pieces were found next in the possession of a girl at the high school in the sophomore class. This young lady was questioned and asked to return the jewelry to the Gibsons, but she would not attest to as to how she came to have them, although she finally agreed to return them. The Gibsons did not get them back. The jewelry was semi-valuable, having been Christmas and birthday presents to Trini. A hand-drawn map was also surfaced and was attributed to a fellow student of Trini's. He was questioned by the authorities and the Gibsons' lawyer and released. He was not a part of the field trip that day. Robert Simpson had come by the Gibsons' residence when Trini's parents were in the park awaiting news on their daughter. He made two strange comments to Tina, Trini's younger sister. He said that if Kevin Bowman has Trini, he will kill her. If he does not have her, I think she must have ran off with some horny hitchhiker. In October of 1975, a student named Kelvin Bowman from the high school had broken into the Gibsons' residence one night. He was shot in the foot by Hope Gibson. He was charged and sentenced to serve time in a correction facility for juveniles. Although sentenced to 2 years, he only served around 6 months, and he was back at the high school by the time Trini disappeared. When he was sentenced, he had made threats in the courtroom to harm Trini when he was released. From what the principal could discern, Kevin Bowman was attending classes at the high school the day that Trinity disappeared. Trinity's purse, bank book, makeup, clothing, and cash that she had at home were all left behind. She had more than $1,000 in her bank account, and that was left untouched as well. Trini was orderly. If she had wanted to do something like run away from home, she was smart enough to prepare. Trini was last seen at approximately 3 p.m. on October 8, 1976, in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. She was wearing a blue blouse, had a pastel blue striped sweater, blue jeans, and blue Adidas shoes. She had on a brown and orange plaid wool jacket, which she had borrowed from Robert Simpson. She has long brown hair, green eyes, is 5'3" and 115 pounds. Trini is just another one that seems to have just disappeared in the Great Smoky Mountains. Now, I don't know if maybe she ran away, or maybe Robert had something to do with her disappearance. That's the way it seems to be pointing to me. What do you think? What happened to Trini Gibson? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Our third missing person from the Great Smoky Mountains. It's going to be a short one. I couldn't find much on him, but his name is Christopher Cessna. Age 45, from Cary, North Carolina, was reported missing on April 27, 2011. Rangers found Cessna's 2009 Audi in the Newfound Gap parking lot, but there was no other evidence to further the search. Cessna was never found. Rangers at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park are mounting a search for a Cary, North Carolina man who was reported missing on April 27th. The park is also asking that anybody who may have seen the subject, Christopher Cessna, 45, in the last 3 weeks, whether it be in the park or elsewhere, to contact the park. Cessna was reported missing to the Cary Police Department on April 27th, which issued a missing persons report, but it was not sent to the park because family members had no reason to suspect that he would go there. The park learned that Cessna was missing when they checked the license plate of Cessna's 2009 Audi, which may have been parked at Newfound Gap parking area for weeks. The popular Appalachian Trail crosses the park at Newfound Gap, so park officials say it is common for vehicles to be left there for weeks at a time. Rangers mounted a search radiating out from the Newfound Gap along the Appalachian Trail and connecting trails. They are looking for clues of somebody having gotten off trail and are checking the logs at the shelters for any entries related to Cessna. Park officials report that Cessna had been despondent and that a handgun he owned could not be located at his residence, so they are concerned about the possibility that he may have planned to take his own life. Cessna is 45 years old, white, 5'10", and 230 pounds. He has brown hair and brown eyes and a fair complexion. The Great Smoky Mountain Rangers have scaled back their efforts to find 45-year-old Christopher Cessna, who has been missing since April 27th. For over a week, rangers and search dog teams combed the forest near the Newfound Gap parking area, where Cessna's car was found, but no but found no sign of him. Searchers intensively covered an area of about 2 miles, radiating out from the parking lot and from the hiking trails that passed through the area, and probed acres of steep, rocky terrain and dense brush. Up to 30 searchers, including as many as 4 search dog teams, covered the area each day and followed up on every suspected scent alert, but found no trace of Cessna. The case remains open, and staff will continue to be on the lookout for signs of Cessna while engaged in regular duties. So what do you all think? Do you think he's just disappeared like the others? Or was this an act to take his own life, and then the body never be found? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thelma Pauline Melton. On September 25th, 1981, 58-year-old Thelma Pauline Melton, Polly for short, headed to Deep Creek Trail in the Smoky Mountains National Park with her husband Bob and 2 friends. She loved the mountains and spent as much time as she could in the Smokies. One of her favorite places was the Deep Creek Trail, and she had spent nearly 20 years visiting the location and making the hike. Once they arrived, Bob parked their Airstream trailer and stayed inside. Due to Bob's health and age, being that he was around 20 or so years older than Polly, he wasn't able to join them on most of the hiking excursions. However, Polly and her 2 friends gladly readied themselves for a leisurely hike. The trail they were taking was listed as easy, so there wasn't any difficult terrain to be particularly worried about. Polly and her friends began hiking the trail, and on their way back to the campsite, she began picking up her pace and walked ahead of her friends, quickly leaving them behind. They saw her walk over a small hill and then go out of sight. They assumed they would see her back at the trailer. At around 4:30 p.m., they made it back to the campsite. Bob was inside, but Polly was nowhere to be found, and Bob hadn't seen her since she had left for the hike. Polly's friends went back to the area they last seen Polly, and they began searching for her, but were unable to locate anything that pointed in the direction that she may have gone. She was reported missing at 6 p.m. that evening, and a much larger search effort was soon underway. Over the course of that week, over 150 people searched for Polly, as well as 9 search dogs. At one point, a dog altered to a tree that was downed, and searchers believed that she may have stopped to rest there for a moment. They did not pick up her scent at any other location. Not so much as a trace was found of Polly. Of course, the notion of kidnapping entered the mind of the searchers until they realized that Polly was a large woman. She is 5'11" and weighed around 180 pounds. Her stature, along with the fact that she had disappeared in broad daylight with a number of other people on the trail at the time, led authorities to believe that an abduction would be nearly out of the question. There was no indication that anyone had gone off the trail. According to Polly's day-to-day routine, not much out of the ordinary happened on the day she went missing. The only unusual thing was that she decided against going to the volunteer job she went to every day, passing out meals to the elderly. The day before that, however, it was reported that she made several phone calls using the work phone, She had never used the phones in the 4 years that she had been volunteering. Law enforcement was unable to trace the phone calls, so we don't know if they were in any way connected to her disappearance. Her pastor did advise that she had been struggling with depression after her mother had passed away earlier in the year. She had also been prescribed Valium in 1979 as a muscle relaxant, but had stopped taking them before 1981. Yet her husband's bottle of Valium was discovered to be missing after she disappeared. However, it's never been determined that Polly was the one who took them. Her pastor also mentioned that he thought Polly may have been having an affair with another man at the time. This has never been substantiated. Polly did suffer from high blood pressure and nausea and was taking medication for both at the time of her disappearance. She did not have the medication, her identification, or any money with her when she vanished. Just a pack of cigarettes. Probably one of the most intriguing things about this disappearance is that in April of 1982, a check was written to Polly Mountain and cashed in Birmingham, Alabama. Investigations into the check were a dead end. Could Polly have planned to vanish that day? Was she so dissatisfied with her life that she would choose to walk away from it? Maybe she did meet someone. Maybe she met someone that she could enjoy life with. You would have to admit that for an active lady, which Polly seemed to be, it would be difficult to be with someone who wasn't as healthy enough to participate in the things you enjoyed. So what if she met someone and spent all that time on her work phone, arranging everything, and then on that day she quickened her pace so that she could leave her friends behind, went to a predetermined location to meet, and make a new life with her new lover? Of course, that is all wild speculation on my part, but it would definitely be a better alternative than any other explanation. So what do you think happened to Polly? Did she just disappear like Dennis and Trini? Who's to say? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. The fifth and final missing person is Derek Luking. Derek Luking disappeared March 17th, 2012, Newfound Gap, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. On March 15th, 2012, 24-year-old Derek Luking did not show up for work, and calls to his cell phone went unanswered when a mutual friend, altered roommate Ron Molden, said that Derek hadn't arrived at work that morning. He called Derek's family. The Lukings traveled from their home in Virginia throughout the night to Tennessee. Ryan and family members checked Derek's computer and found a search for the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and a reservation for a hotel on March 17th. Surveillance video showed Derek leaving the Micro Inn and Suites near the National Park in Cherokee, North Carolina. On the bed of the hotel room, his family found a Bible, and on the floor was a liquor bottle. Derek was wearing just a day backpack, and this video footage would be the last sighting of Derek before his strange disappearance from the Great Smoky Mountains area. Luking was born in Northern Virginia, graduated from Johnson University in Knoxville, and worked as an orderly for the Peninsula Behavioral Health Center. Luking's nickname was Drock. He went by his initials DJ. He was believed to be wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt, dark-colored track pants with a white stripe down the side of each leg, dark-colored sneakers, and possibly a waterproof watch. He was perhaps carrying camouflage print, real tree rain gear, and a black or dark blue book bag typed that day. Derek had brown hair and hazel eyes, with a half-inch beard at the time of his disappearance, and he may have worn prescription eyeglasses with metal rims. He has stretch marks on his lower back and a tattoo of Japanese characters meaning live or life on his left upper chest. The family went out looking for him that same day, and by luck found Derek's car, a white Ford Escape, in the parking lot of an area called Newfound Gap on the Tennessee-North Carolina line. In the abandoned Ford, there was a lot of newly purchased survival gear, including a pickaxe, a compass, lamp, pocket knife, knife sharpener, tent, sleeping bag, 100 feet of black parachute cord, granola bars, and a survivor belt containing a multi-tool, flashlight, and fire starter rod. The kit was worth around $1,000. Pages from a military survivor manual, Derek's wallet, and cash were also found in the vehicle. Derek had been preparing for a trip into the wilderness, but he had not taken any of his newly purchased outdoor gear. Another disturbing clue was a note that Derek had left behind in the car that said, "Don't try to follow me," suggesting he just wanted to disappear, perhaps with suicidal thoughts. Earlier that year, Tim Luking, Derek's father, had noticed a change in his son. He started drinking a little bit and smoking cigarettes, which was highly unusual for him. He wasn't happy with his job, where his life was going. He assumed Derek was dealing with his post-graduation stress and transitioned into adulthood. His family and friends dispute that he had any severe depression or suicidal tendencies, which would have caused him to kill himself in the national park. Perhaps the "don't try to follow me" message was left by someone wishing to throw the authorities off the scent. Despite the note, search and rescue workers preserved and tried to follow him. An intense search was launched of the area where his car was found, and rangers interviewed campers and hikers in the vicinity, asking whether they had seen Derek. Strangely, no one could remember seeing him, despite it being sunny and the area having plenty of people picnicking, hiking, etc. As a result, authorities believe that he might have gone off trail immediately after leaving his car and quickly got lost or intentionally avoided people in the area to avoid detection. There were reports of a possible sighting report along Newfound Gap Road, where Luking may have entered the woods, but this came to nothing. About 60 people, 3 dog teams were assigned to continue the search for Luking. The searchers have been organized into 14 search teams that had walked more than 70 miles of trails surrounding the Newfound Gap parking area. Trail search teams explored any area along the trail where it would appear relatively easy to get off the trail and into the woods. And once off trail, the teams would look for tracks or clues that anybody had passed that way. The teams continued into the woods until they reached a point where it was either unsafe to continue, or until they reached a barrier, such as a rhododendron thicket where Derek could not have gone without leaving evidence of his passage. Although the trail was popular and well used, walking off of it led quickly into the dangerous wilderness. One ranger said, we would have felt better if he had bought all this gear and brought it with him. In this case, he made preparations but didn't follow through. Did he change his mind about the equipment or bump into someone who forced him off the trail and told him to write, "Don't try to follow me" note? The strange circumstances around the story continued. Some months after Derek's disappearance, a backpack and then subsequently human remains were discovered in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, close to the area where he disappeared. But it was found to be Michael Genovese. Derek's family stated that Derek had been a fan of the TV show Man vs. Wild, in which the host gets left out in the middle of the wilderness by himself with little to no gear to find his way back to civilization whilst living off the land. This led authorities to speculate that he may have been trying to emulate the show. Could Derek have suddenly decided to leave his equipment behind to make things more challenging, like in the TV show? Unfortunately, according to his family, Derek was not particularly experienced with the outdoors. So if this was his decision, it was very foolish, as even experienced outdoors people can struggle in the Smoky Mountains National Park. Maybe he went out to check the trail, planning to return for his outdoor kit, and somehow got lost. Or was he attacked by a wild animal or kidnapped? If a bear or cat attacked him, there would have been a trace, blood, or torn clothing. Another theory is that Derek went off to commit suicide. The family has stated that the day that he disappeared was the first anniversary of the death of his grandfather, with whom he had been close. But if he was planning to kill himself, why buy all the expensive new survival gear? Despite discovering this evidence since 2012, no sign of Derek has ever been found, and he is still listed as missing. His father posted a letter regarding his son's disappearance on Help Find Derek, a Facebook page, saying, "I know many of you have questions concerning Derek's disappearance and have seen conflicting information in the news reports. I have put together the following information in the hopes of clarifying questions you may have. Derek went missing Wednesday, March 14th from his home in Louisville, Tennessee. Over the next 2 days, he purchased over $1,000 in camping equipment from Bass Pro Shop, Knife Works, and Coleman's. We believe he stayed at the Motel 6 on the 14th, the Smokemont campground in the park on the 15th, and the Micro Hotel in the Cherokee on the 16th. His car was found March 17th at 8:30 a.m. at Newfound Gap in the Smoky Mountains after family saw him leave the Micro Hotel alone in Cherokee, North Carolina, through video footage at 4 a.m. A note stating only, don't look for me, was found in his car, along with a wallet and car key. The note was not addressed to anyone, so it could have been for us or the Rangers. The Great Smoky Mountains Park Service has never quit searching for Derek as they rappelled down some high cliffs March 29th and did not find anything. The Rangers, park employees, volunteers, and trail runners continue to look for him. Rangers are also still looking into the investigation aspect of this case, following up with the purchases he made and trying to find out if there were any other significant clues in the recent past. We are extremely grateful for their continued efforts. Searchers have hiked hundreds of miles of trails after the weeks after his disappearance, which include using multiple dog scent trackers, 3 different days using helicopters, and 1 night helicopter. Unfortunately, no significant clues were found leading to Derek, but rangers still believe he is in the park somewhere, possibly off trail. The Park Service intentionally asked for our family not to search directly for Derek to avoid contaminating clues and wanted trained Park Service searcher on the trails. So we handed out a flyer with Derek's picture to everyone who hit the trails. As Park Service's direct search wound down, we started. Our family and friends, along with other concerned people, gathered the 24th and 25th of March to search for Derek. A total over 60 people showed up to hike and hand out flyers. Hikers that showed up hiked a total of 175 miles of trail, and people handed out about 3,000 flyers to people in the park and surrounding areas. There is still the possibility that Derek is not in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, so we would like to make sure that the information about him is available to the public. The family has not given hope on finding Derek and is doing anything in their power to work with and help the rangers who are investigating, as well as trying to make sure that the information is out in the world as well. There is a Facebook page, Find Derek Looking, that the family is keeping up to inform anyone interested about the case. Please help spread the word to anyone hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains area to keep an eye out for Derek. What do you all think of this? Is he still in the mountains somewhere? Did he disappear like the others? Do you think suicide was a possibility? Or did he leave those notes? Leave the suspicion and get in the car with somebody else and just take off to never return? Let me know what you think in the comments below.